Hey guys, welcome back to another vlog. This vlog is just going to be me going over some of my recent training. This is again kind of like my peak week training in terms of, hey, this is after many weeks of accumulation. I'm at my closest proximity to failure, if not failure, 0 RAR, no reps left in the tank basically with this training. And I think I'm just going to walk you through some of the exercises that I recorded and just some thoughts behind each of them. And hopefully you find it useful and insightful. If there was a theme for this vlog, I'll let you know, probably in the title, because right now, I don't know what it is. I'm just going to overview it because you guys seem to enjoy me walking through some of my training and the thought process behind some of the things that I'm doing. So the first exercise that we're going over here is my leg press. So with these recently, I've been running these leg press for a long time. Do you ever have it with movements where you've been running them like a year, or you've kind of had the exercise in, but you've like moved it around a little bit? Maybe you've changed the day that you're training on or the position it is in within your workout, but it's just been in for ages and it feels fantastic. That's the reason it's been in for ages. I haven't removed it because I do it and I get just unbelievable stimulus from it. But it is very challenging and I actually can't produce much volume through it in terms of sets. As you know from a previous vlog, I don't really like set volume as like the determinant of many things. There seems to be a dose-response relationship between volume and hypertrophy, but I think that just removes so many things that are involved with volume. Like, hey, you're doing a leg press or a squat or a leg extension or a sissy squat. That's all going to have a different kind of input and output. That's why I prefer stimulus, which obviously I did a different vlog on. So anyway, with these, obviously I'm coming down and I'm trying to come as deep as I can. Something that you'll notice with these, I don't know if I've spoken about it before, but I do let my heels come off. Someone recently asked me, hey, why are you wearing squat shoes when you let your heels come off? I've got squat shoes on. I've also got essentially Versa lifts in there as well, so it's an extra heel lift. And if I didn't have those two things going on, my heels would be coming off like now, whereas they just come off as I come into the bottom position. And I'm not concerned about it. I'm in a very controlled environment. It's not like it's putting me off balance if I was doing like a barbell back squat or something. I'm very, very stable here. So yeah, that's why I'm not too worried about it. Getting that extra range of motion with that slight heel lift. I'm not losing stability here. So you can see that final rep. Now, some people might argue, well, why not go for another rep there? And I would argue, like, what's that going to achieve? Like, I'm going to get an eccentric and then I'm going to like try and I'm going to just have to crawl out of the machine. 1, risk of injury. 2, potentially, I would say an exponential fatigue cost. It's just not worth it to me. So like, I knew that was 0 RER. Like I knew I didn't need to come down and confirm that like I'm failing now. So anyway, what I did do is, because this was my final actual session, see I'm bigging myself up here for this set. I was like, hey, I've been running 2 sets on this leg press. Let's just test myself and see if I've been like being a quote unquote pussy and could have been doing more. So I reduced the load by about 10% and I went at it. And you're about to see me kind of just like, it's like my body gave up on me. Like I hit a failure point, but I then like just like bigged myself up and got the rep. And then I went for another one because I was like, that definitely wasn't like 0 RER. I feel like I've got another one. And then that one just like took me completely out. And my reps were, I think, even lower than the set before. And I've reduced the load by 10%. So it was like just clearly kaput. So like here, I was like, come on, I've got that. And then I was like, okay, that wasn't, I've still got more in the tank, of course. Like, I know myself. And then I went for this one and I was like, God damn, that's really, really freaking challenged me. And I was like, there's no way in hell I have another one to come down into. So, yeah, one of the interesting, as a side note, within research studies, at least the one done by Martin Refalo, who's been on the podcast, by the way. He's been doing lots of research into proximities to failure, but he had to get rid of one of his studies because he was looking at the leg press and doing it with both legs at the same time, and people were just falling out, getting injured because they were trained to failure every time. So we had to do it single leg, which seems to be safer. So yeah, it's like, hey, training leg press to failure is really, really very difficult. So this is another movement I've literally had in for a year. I can't tell you the loads I was using when I started to now, but the progression has been wild. Like I've just been able to progress, month on month. I think a large part of that was like neurological efficiency, obviously muscle gain as well. And I hope it wasn't technique degradation because that can happen. Your eccentrics get a little bit faster. You don't pause as well. You don't maybe have as much control. Maybe I let my hips drop or my knees bend more. And I don't think that was happening. So this was a good 5 kilo PR on last meso, as I like to compare meso to meso really. It's a realistic amount of time that I'm going to make some progress with the lift. You can see from about that lift there, my lower back starts rounding. And you can really see I'm challenged and I'm like, come on, you've got this, like do this rep. And then this one again, my lower back is rounding there. And I'm struggling to keep it on the hamstrings. And even reps before this, like my hamstrings are shaking and shivering. And this does happen. And no matter what you do, you can't seem to like gather yourself and keep a mind muscle connection on the hamstrings. You just have to you have to kind of consist with your hip, back and knee positioning and just go through the movement. You can't focus too much on mind muscle connection. I find when you get those shakes, it's like it switches off for some reason. I tend to find that only really happens as you're getting very, very heavy and close to failure, which, I mean, that's basically all the time. So now I've got my hack squats. So I had to reduce load from when I was using these about like a year ago, because I've only just recently recycled these back in, because you'll see my eccentrics are like 4 seconds on the way down. I have a very slight pause. I'm considering in my next meso to not change anything, keep the same reps load as my goals, but try and get the pause in the hole to an actual like 1 count to a second. Because I come down and I kind of like, I feel myself pause, but if you're watching it, you're like, Steve, are you really pausing? And that'd be a fine critique, because I am, but I'm not like, it's just like take a moment at the bottom, don't just like use a stretch reflex. Whereas I'm considering, again, like I said, just to add an actual true pause there versus just trying to drive up load in this rep range. But I was really pleased with how these went, because if you can hear it in my voice, I'm still recovering from a sickness. And this was, when was this? So I kind of got sick. And then I was like, oh, I'm not that sick. I'll train another day. And then the day after that, I was like very sick. And I'd driven myself into the ground with the workout that I did. And I was like, man, I'm so sick. I'm like similar here. That rep there you just saw. What would be the benefit of doing another rep? I would go down and like either to get the rep, I'd let technique break down and I'd risk injury, or I'd come down, pause, and then just like pulse up and go down and be like, have the walk of shame, you know? I just, now and then I think it's absolutely fine to do, but I very rarely, I mean, actually, to be honest with you, if there's a 50-50 chance I think I'm going to get the next rep, I go for it. That's just the way I'm driven, and I'm not going to apologize about it. It's not done me poorly to date. Maybe I'm just lucky that I don't get injured easily, and I also have good technique generally, so it hasn't kind of done me a dirty yet. But yeah, a lot of people, if they're 50-50 with stuff, they wouldn't even go for it. But I will go for it. But if I'm less than 50% sure I'm going to get it, which means I'm pretty sure I'm not, like, I'm not risking going for that rep on some of these lifts where I just don't think it's worth it. You will see me attempt a rep again where I thought there was a good chance I'd get it and I fail it. You'll see that for a different movement later down the line. So again, with these, you can see as I come down, my heels actually come off a little bit, and then they kind of come back down, and then as I push up, they come off a little bit. I'm not trying to allow that to happen. I'm trying to press through my full foot, but the fact it happens doesn't take away from my force production. Now, if it feels uncomfortable to you, or it does take away from that, then fair enough. As I was mentioning, like, I was pretty happy with the performance I had for that session, given the fact I'd been sick days earlier, and I took a rest day the day before it because I was just too sick to be able to do a good leg session. So okay, actually we're on the lift where I failed. So you might look at this and you'll be like, oh, I thought you had that rep. And that's totally fair, because I also thought I probably had it. I just wasn't sure. You could also argue I could have a spot. I just always train on my own, and I also don't trust people to be a spot. And I think the way that I lift allows me to fail in mostly a safe way. Like, I have control over the eccentric. It's not super slow. I have a slight pause on my chest. It's a load that I've acclimatized to. It's not like a 10% increase on last week or something. It's literally 2.5 kilo increase on last week. So yeah, I come through this and I attempt the rep. And you even see me kind of go like, So I actually thought I had it. And then I was like, no, you see my butt lift. I have to help that left side, my right side, sorry. And I was like, damn it. Can't quite count that rep. So this is actually on the day that I was kind of like getting sick, and I was quite like, I didn't feel great, but I was like, I can still work out. I can do an upper body workout. So I got it done, but it took me a long time. It just didn't feel great. So I did PR on these as well. I'm considering rotating. Actually, you're noticing I'm considering rotating quite a few exercises out. I'd have to double check. I've been running these for quite a while though. And I'm just finding, again, similar to the leg press, I'm doing 2 sets and then I'm just feeling very systemically taxed. And I'm just wondering if I can get a better stimulus to fatigue ratio from rotating this movement out. I don't know exactly what I'd replace it with yet, because it's a pretty overall back stimulus. I get a good amount of like upper back. I get a good amount of just like, I guess upper back, including the upper lats. And I'm getting erectors as well. Like a good amount of erector is getting done through that movement due to kind of being bent over with that load, of course. So yeah, coming on to this movement, if you're noticing, I'm actually doing essentially a lengthen partial here where I'm missing the lockout. I'm doing that on quite a lot of my pressing movements. Not all of them. The incline barbell bench press, I didn't really do it because it just didn't feel right. Whereas for these, it felt right to not lock out. And part of that for me is like, my chest is a bigger priority than my triceps. Locking out is largely triceps. It's also the short position, which seems to be less hypertrophic. One thing I do want to try for this is either get some fat grips and put them over the grip, which will push me into a more stretched position. Or, and I have some fat grips at home, but I don't know if I chuck them out, like at home at my parents' home. Or see if I can pad out the seat. I've tried padding out the seat before and it just didn't really feel comfortable. It actually made me a bit unstable and was uncomfortable on my shoulders. So on these as well, I'm coming for that deep stretch, and then I'm just kind of like coming forward and missing the lockout. The range of motion looks shorter, I think, visually than it is when I'm actually doing it. Like I feel like I get a really good stretch, and then I'm literally just coming to the point where I'm like, now I feel like triceps are taking over, and I just come back in. And also, I think I don't know how the resistance profile is on some of these machines, but I think some of them bias the short position a little bit much, or there's a bit more loading there than I would like. So it helps me shift that bias to that lengthened position as well. So here are my lat pull downs. These, like, I have to get very aggressive with these movements. If you heard me full volume, you would hear some noises. As I approach failure too, it's like the rep or two away from failure, I tend to like let a little squeal come out, like, come on. Actually, I'll sometimes say come on as well. I think that's just a consequence of me training on my own and yeah, doing it. But yeah, one thing on this I noticed some people struggling with is I want to be a bit sat away from the cable, i.e. I don't want to be sat right under the cable. So I sit back in the seat. But when you sit back in the seat, you maybe won't be as stable because your legs aren't as under the kind of supports. So I really shove my knees underneath. And then some people put like plates or something under their feet to like close that gap so you're nice and stable. But what I do is basically a calf raise. You can't see me, but I'm on my toes and I'm pushing into that support. And that just makes me like locked into the seat. Now my butt actually hasn't really come off, but it could even come off a little bit. But it's not terrible there. So I think that was actually my entire workout, or all the clips that I had available to kind of talk through with you guys. And this was just some post-workout posing from that session. I get a crazy lat pump sometimes. I've been getting some of the best lat pumps I've been getting. And for whatever reason, this angle really makes my front lat spread look decent when it's probably my worst mandatory muscular pose. My front relaxed is my worst pose overall. So yeah, guys, I don't know what else to say apart from we just walked through some bits and pieces here. I said I'd try and gather a theme from this, and I don't know if I have one. Again, I'll have to think about what I want to talk about, or rather name this as in terms of what the title's going to be. And I am now liable, if I continue to talk, to just completely ramble. So I'm going to leave this here, or soon. I'm still posing, right? So you've still got to see my back come through. And I'm feeling good. Feeling really good in this mass. My calories are actually around 3,007. Now I've moved them up to 3,008. I thought I was gaining a little bit rapidly, so I slowed them back down. But it seems I've been sitting just below 190 pounds for a really extended period of time. So I need to push them up into possibly at some point they're going to come to like 4,000 calories, which is normally where I get to, 4,000, 4,100, when I'm trying to push into the 190s and above. And then theoretically, I'm due another mini cut. Typically, when I get into the 190s, that's when I don't feel so good. And my body fat, no, it's not really a body fat issue. It's not a body fat issue at all. It's I don't feel so good. My appetite is terrible. My sleep gets worse. I feel bad. So I'll go through a really short, sharp mini cut. And then it would be another push before, I think, in theory, starting prep for 2024. So where I would be starting about the body comp that you saw there. So around 190 pounds is where I'm considering to start prep, which my stage weight is anywhere from 170 to 175 pounds. And I think I need to get a bit leaner. So it'll be a good, like my lowest lows were just below 170. So I'll have to lose 20 odd pounds, probably 25 pounds. But I should have plenty of time. But that's all subject to change depending on life and how I feel. And if I decide I want to also enroll a coach, which I realize that time is ticking for that. And I don't want to approach anyone any degree of late that they would consider late. I don't think that's fair or respectable, and it isn't what I'd want as a coach. So anyway, guys, like I said, I'm going to ramble if I don't cut it here. So I'm going to cut this here. Hopefully there's been something to draw from this. If you've got any questions, if you want to see anything in future, let me know. If you enjoyed this, also let me know. And I'll catch you in the next one.